My name is Ken Swanton. I'm the Vice Chair of the Zoning Board of Appeals and chairing the meeting this evening. You all this evening. I'd like to start by taking attendance on the board. So just please say here or present. Mr. Stephen Delisle. Here. Mr. Gregory Bennett. Here. Larry Junta. Present. And John Harding. Here. And I am here. So that's five. It takes five to vote. To hear a hearing. You'll require 4 to 5 votes. Our other person, Jared Eigerman, is hurrying here from Boston, and we expect him anymore. So with that, I'd also like to introduce our folks over here. Andy Port, head of planning for the city of Newburyport. Our city planner, Gretchen Sullivan, and I'm sorry, Caitlin Sullivan, and our taker of the minutes. Gretchen Joy. So with that, we will open up the first hearing. Now we have 3 hearings tonight, and the third one they've asked to please continue it to a future date. So we will take care of that one first. Is there anybody here to talk to 29 Boardman Street? Yes, Attorney Mead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Lisa Mead, Mead Acosta. We did ask for continuance. We're going back to the Historic Commission. We're not done with the Historic Commission yet. So we're asking for a continuance. I think we said July 1st, Caitlin, maybe. It's your first meeting in July because the Historic Commission's next meeting that we're going to be able to be at is June 24th.
July 14th.
July 14th.
Well, there's a request to continue that until July 13th.
14th.
Is there any is there a motion to continue?
Move.
Second. Okay, moved and second. Pull it down. Line, Mr. Delisle. Mr. Bennett.
Yeah.
Mr. Junta.
Yeah.
Mr. Harding.
Yes.
I vote yes. So that's 5 in the affirmative. It is continued. All right, that gets us to our first hearing. Now, the way it works is a little bit on the lay of the land. Is that the first thing that happens is the presenter will just present whatever they'd like, hopefully in under 20 minutes or so. And then we'll close the presentation part of the hearing, and anybody in the room can make a public comment. And they can be for or against whatever you have to say. You can ask questions or whatever, although questions won't be answered by the applicant at that time. We'll be taking careful notes up here, and your questions may reappear from one of us so we get to our questions. After the public comment period, we'll close that, and everyone's had a chance to talk. And we would go to questions from the board. And each board member will be able to ask questions of the applicant. Once that is done, we'll go to a period of deliberations where we talk out loud. What are the pros and cons of this, and does it meet the requirements under the statutes for relief? And then we will take a vote. So that's basically the way it works. So the first one is a variance to construct a pool within the front yard Winter Street setback, the 180 High Street property. Lisa Mead will be presenting. You have the floor.
Thank you very much again, Mr. Chair. For the record, Lisa Mead, Meadtown, Acosta, 30 Green Street, Newburyport. I'm on here on behalf of Jason and Jody Field, who are the owners of the property. And as you know, we were here about a month ago to make our initial presentation. If you go to the next slide, please, Kevin. The board asked for some further information regarding the arborist report and asked the applicant to take another look at the length of the pool or the incursion into the Winter Street setback. So right now, we're the setback from Winter Street, because it is the primary front yard. The zoning perspective is 20 feet, and we're requesting it to go to 8 feet. The original request was 6 feet. This is the R3 zoning district, and the lot and the home are both non-conforming. The goal of the fields is to preserve the health of beech tree, as you all know, while still being able to use their side yard. The board requested, as I said, that we pull back a little bit further from Winter Street and look at provide more details about the root zone of that tree. And there we had a further request over the weekend that we received from Caitlin regarding the view from High Street as well, which we will be presenting to you tonight. And We also had arborists come back and dig some exploratory trenches, which we will talk about also. So if you go to the next slide, please. So just as a reminder, this is the tree at the corner of Winter Street and High Street. It is on private property owned by the clients. This is the tree we are trying to preserve. Next slide, please. And this is a view traveling south on Winter Street, and you can see the property on the right-hand side. Next slide, please. And then this is traveling west on High Street. You can see the trees, a better view without the limbs, without the leaves, to see the extent of the reach of the tree. Next slide, please. And this is a shot across the street, and I took that, and I think we're gonna have one a little bit closer next. But I wanted you to show this, particularly for the vegetation that exists there now, and in light of the request we got to show the view from High Street. So there's a little bit of vegetation that was planted a while ago by a landscaper, but has really not appropriate for the front yard, and has gotten a little bit larger than one would like, to show off the historic home that exists there. Next slide, please. And this is just a little bit closer. And I'm showing you this because when we show you the rendering of the proposed condition, this will all be gone, which will then show off the iron fence as well as the tree in its entirety. And we'll show you that in a little bit. Next slide, please. So test works were conducted to evaluate the root conditions. As you can see from the notes of the on-site work, which I provided to you, trench B shows a presence of denser feeder roots, and those are the closest to the tree of the two trenches. Trench A, just outside the primary canopy, shows a smaller feeder root area. The trenches were approximately 20 inches deep when they were dug. Consistent with the original report, the goal is to locate the pool as far away from the root system as possible in order to avoid damaging the tree and allowing it to continue to thrive. In addition, you'll see that arborist has also included a number of recommendations for the placement and construction and how that all works to afford the most protection of the tree. The applicant agrees to comply with those recommendations, and we will be willing to have those listed as part of the decision as well. Those are listed as 3 to 6 on the second arborist report. I'm happy to go through those in a little bit. Next slide, please. So here are the two trenches that were dug. And you can see one is a little bit under the tree, and the other is outside, right outside of the canopy. Next slide, please. And just to give you a better location, the first trench that I described with the denser roots is B, and that is located under the canopy. And I don't know if you can show that, Caitlin, with your cursor. You see that little circle in the middle that looks like it's got like a checkerboard right under the canopy. Go towards the pool to the center of the right there. Right, so that's the first trench. The second trench is right up at the edge of the construction that's going to take place right there. So it's outside the canopy. So those are where the two trenches were done. While I'm on this plan, I do want to show you, and we'll show you a rendering in a little bit. I think it's a valid question that was asked to understand what is going to protect the view from High Street and how this is all seen. So if you look at the top corner, right-hand corner of the house, the southeastern corner, you'll see that that's approximately where that sidewalk goes in. Is approximately where the fence, there's going to be a 6-foot white solid panel fence that will extend from there over towards the right, if you go right on that plan, and then you'll see the arc around, and so that arcs around there, and then that 6-foot panel fence stays on top of the wall, right, away from the edge. That iron rail will stay along the fence line at the edge of the property, down along the edge. That will be replaced by the wall that's going to be down there. And so, as I will tell you in a little bit, the iron fence that is going to be removed will be reused on site. But while I'm here, I will also point out to you, and if you could blow up the pool area a little bit more, Caitlin, please. You'll see that we backed away another 2 feet from the edge of the property line. And so now the pool is 8 feet away, and we're going to show you a rendering in a minute how that looks. So the setback on Winter Street is 20 feet required. It will be 8 feet. It should be noted that it's actually 17 feet from the street itself. If this were actually a side yard, the requirement would be 6 feet. So it's not, it's a front yard, and that's why we're here to ask for a variance. If you could go to the next slide, please. So, I just went through this. This is the layout. We have shortened it and kind of reshaped the pool a little bit in order to provide more room against the edge and a bigger separation to the edge of the property. Next slide, please. So here's what the proposal looks like. You can see the panel fence on top of the wall, but again, it's a terraced effect, so we continue that retaining wall or the terrace wall down, the stone wall down along the corner to the driveway. Then there's a planting bed above that, and then behind that is the fence that is around the pool area. So it actually is not right on top of the pavement at all, and certainly won't appear as to be right on top of this. Next slide, please. So the Beach Street, again, the existence of the tree is a natural condition, and the tree is located at the highest point in the property. Corner of High and Winter Street, which is approximately at elevation 61. The back of the lot before the drop into the driveway is at elevation 55. So there's a 6-foot drop in elevation over a very short distance on this property. All of you've been by it, so you understand that. Then, of course, the driveway is even lower as a result. We have a retaining wall there. Between the roots of the tree causing a soil condition, preventing the construction, and the steep decline in the topography over a short distance, the property has 2 natural hardships related to the land. Given the foregoing hardships, the applicant is forced to locate the pool in the front yard setback, which for all practical purposes, of course, is the side yard. The proposal is to locate the pool at an 8-foot setback, as opposed to the 20-foot setback. If you go to the next slide. So as the High Street elevation, which I have argued and believe, and I think you all would all agree, is the practical front yard from which you will see no pool. We'll show you that rendering in a minute. There's a 6-foot solid panel fence proposing to extend to the southeast corner of the house, eastward towards Winter Street, but then wrapping around the interior patio space, as I noted, and arcing around along the upper terrace wall. And I also noted that the vegetation will be cleaned up in the front and new vegetation planted, and any iron fence removed will be reused on site. If you go to the next slide, please. So here's the sketch that Rob Leanna did in an amazingly short period of time. But you can see how we expose the iron fence again. The tree is exposed. The fence, the white panel fence blocks whatever's happening in the back of the yard, and the front of High Street, the front elevation of High Street, frankly, is quite nice. Next slide, please. I also, again, include a by right sketch. This by right sketch is the exact same size pool. We have flipped it. You can see by flipping it, you get closer underneath the canopy. We are now over that second trench entirely, plus it's broader in that direction. So you're incurring on the root system in a larger area than you would have before, and it's closer to the original trench or the first trench, which is under the tree. And we're really concerned about if we flip the pool in this direction, what impact it's going to have on the roots of the tree. And you can go to the next slide. So as a wrap up, the applicant has a soil condition due to the tree and its roots, and the significant topographical change over a short distance is unique to this lot and the neighborhood. As I pointed out in my first meeting, there is not another tree in this area that is a similar location on such a visible location on the lot. Relief can be granted without substantially derogating from the purpose and intent of the ordinance, which here is to assure the structures don't encroach on the primary yard, namely a front yard, and cause an imposition to a traveled way, and this will not. Here, given the terrace design and the landscaping is shown on the attached sketch plan that we showed, there will be no adverse imposition on the primary yard. Indeed, it's likely that a person walking or driving by will not even be able to see the actual pool, obviously, from the fence, or even the fact that there is one up there. Importantly, the practical front yard, that is High Street, will be improved by removing overgrown landscaping, exposing the iron fence, shielding the pool and equipment from view, and the beech tree will continue to anchor this important corner of the city's landscape. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Is that it?
But that's it. And I would remind the board that we did submit letters of support from the neighbors, adjacent neighbors, and down Winter Street last week.
All right, thank you. All right, that closes the presentation part of the hearing. Now we go to any comments or questions from any member of the public. If anybody would like to talk, podium where we can record your voice on the microphone. Would anybody like to say anything in regards to this application? All right, seeing none, we will close that part of the hearing. And we will move to questions from the board. Any board member can ask questions. Who would like to begin? Yes, John.
Is the intent to level up into the pool sit above existing structure primarily?
Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah. We're level it off so that there's more.
What is the material of the fence?
The proposed 6-foot panel fence, cedar.
Other questions? Going once. Questions from the board? So we will go into deliberations. We're deliberating a variant. So we need to talk about criteria for a variant and whether this application meets them. Who would like to begin this conversation?
I came in late. I can deliberate.
Well, I was asking about that. Who are the 5 voting members given the situation?
Yeah, so you would be one of the voting members, John.
Yes, I don't have the specific language in front of me, but just of the findings are hardship, peculiarity. Some get the punchline. It's funny, we haven't given any variances much, and then all of a sudden, I think are deserving. To me, I'm the one that is through staff this view from my street because I believe historically and this is actually the front yard. So, code, Winter Street yard is longer. But this is a very historic building, statewide, of course. And used to be where the start was before the hot. And so I really do think that's relevant to show that what's going on here is respectful of the historic. So it's not like giving the variance on. We aren't doing violence to the intent. That's the first thing I want to say. Next, we had asked the applicant last time to provide us with evidence from their expert arborist about the necessary distance from the tree, and they provided that. And I'm satisfied. We asked them to show us if you rotated it, and I agree they did that. Bottom line is they could rotate it, but Also, topographically, that's part of the area. There are unusual characteristics of this lot. Sometimes we talk about just grade. The last variance we gave on Morgan Street really wasn't about grade. And I'm persuaded this is a peculiar situation. But I would say finally, the most important thing that makes me comfortable personally with the variance is it's the minimum. You know, they're not putting the pool right on the street. They got it as far away as they can. So I'm feeling good about the application. I do think because this is really all about the tree, we want to discuss some important condition regarding the tree. Observing the tree. I know that's the intent, you know. Say. And then,
All right, thank you, Mr. Iron. Who else would like to chime in here one way or another? Yes.
I will comment that particularly way by Winter Street is functionally not here. Extremely important that there's a not to dig into the intrude the high street. Also, I have to say that in the last go round, but alternative analysis, detailed presentation regarding how and to what extent the tree impair location of the pool and other areas. You know, updated information which will compel in my view. The slope of the lot again demonstrates why the tree is impacted. For all those reasons, I think not probably constructed to be very stingy regarding variance. In this case. Yep. And I'm very
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Who else would like to provide your context? What?
Yeah, I would agree with what Mr. Ackerman and Mr. Bennett said. We received the additional information that we asked for. I think that the findings that we need to make for the variance, we have sufficient evidence to make those findings. I'm comfortable with the variance here. I would like to see a condition regarding the material of the fence in the decision. But other than that, I think I can support.
Yes.
I supported this last round. I felt like the variance was necessary because they could have done it a different way and it would have jeopardized. And they went out of their way to plan something to protect the tree. Pretty much the rest of the board wanted more information, but again, your heart was in the right place. It was deserving of a variance, and you did it all. You spent all this extra money to protect a tree for the city, really. And I appreciate that.
I can everybody else just add that I think the project is better. It's put in, and we appreciate you guys taking the time to do diligent to find the data, make a really informed decision to help us make it.
Thank you. And I too concur with my colleagues. The only things I would add are, one is, there hasn't exactly been a lot of letters complaining here, which I think is a good thing. So there's not like there's any strenuous neighborhood position, which we need to consider. The other is, in my half dozen years on this board, this is the third pool we've ruled on that's been on a corner lot where the real front was really the other street like here. And we've approved the other two as well. One was on Moss and one was on White. So to me, it's, there's precedent here too, although I know we don't establish precedents, but nevertheless. So with that, I think I'd like to move to a vote. Would somebody like to make a motion?
Well, I'd like to make consensus on conditions of approval. Mr. Delisle asked about the cedar material for the fence. It's just an easement for the tree, but duty to take reasonable efforts to preserve the tree. The iron fence, maybe just me, but I do think it's important in my decision personally that it's going to be retained on High Street. I think that's a third position, but I find you guys.
I support them.
Is the applicant comfortable with those two conditions?
We're fine with this.
I would move to approve the variance with the necessary statutory and ordinance findings on the condition that owner take reasonable efforts to maintain the construct the privacy fence, cedar wood, preserve the historic wrought iron fence as shown on the drawings.
Is there a second? Mr. Junta, second. Now we will vote. Mr. Delisle.
Yes.
Mr. Bennett.
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Junta and I vote yes as well. It's 5 in the affirmative, 5 no.
Thank you very much.
All right, that gets us to our third and final hearing this evening, which is for 82 Water Street. It's both a special permit for non-conformity to construct an ADU, which increases from non-conforming lot coverage. And it's also a variance to construct an accessory structure, an ADU, within the front setback. So with that, I'll start once again with the presenter. We will also be concise like our previous presenter.
I will do my best, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Douglas DeShane from Finner and Nicholson, 30 Green Street. Here before the board seeking, as was mentioned, both a special permit as well as a variance. I've provided the board a copy of the presentation and an enlargement of all the plans so that it'd be easier for you to see. And also I've provided a little chart that I just put together yesterday in response to one of the operations that received yesterday. So that would be new information to be presented to the board.
Excuse me, has that chart already been uploaded to the public website, to the planning department? Or is that
It was uploaded today, yes.
Okay.
I just, so go to the next slide, please. With me this evening, Scott Steves, he's the owner of the property, and the applicant, Evan Chandler is our engineer, and Scott is actually an architect that designed the structure. Project summary, please. Next slide, please, Karen. So project summary, our client would like to add an accessory dwelling unit to his lot pursuant to the Newburyport accessory dwelling unit ordinance. The existing structure is a two-story, two-family home located in the R2 residential zoning district. The proposed ADU, as determined by the zoning administrator, requires a variance from the applicable front yard setback. That should be 25 feet are required. And we are seeking to be not 10.9 feet back. Additionally, the ADU will result in an increase in the lot coverage, pushing it up to 34.3%. It's currently non-conforming at 26%, and it is a 25% max, as you know. And so we do require a special permit for that increase in the lot coverage. I do want to let you know the proposed increase in lot coverage is a total of 406 square feet. Next slide, please. As I said, the existing conditions, were in the R2 zone. The existing home is non-conforming pre-existing as to the primary front setback. And clearly, we are a corner lot. So just like the hearing you heard before, we have both a secondary and front yard setback. Currently, the existing home is 1.2 feet from the primary front and 1.4 feet from the secondary front. And the maximum lot coverage, as I said, is 6.8, where 25 is required. Further, I do want to let the board know that the established front setback for this lot is actually 3.6 feet. The lot itself is conforming as to lot frontage, however, it is non-conforming as to lot area at 5,419 square feet, whereas 15,000 square feet is now required in this zone for a two-family. Next slide, please. In terms of the zoning impacts, the proposed ADU is an allowed by right use. So the use is allowed by right. The ADU will not impact from a zoning perspective the existing non-conforming structure on the lot or the lot itself. So except for the required front yard setback variance and lot coverage special permit we're seeking tonight, the ADU does meet all other dimensional regulations, including open space and height. Next slide, please. So this is a picture of the assessor's map. And if this works, so here we are. This is Water Street here, 82 Water. And then this is, I know it's mixed up, not Smith, but rather it is, yeah, guys.
Ship.
Ship. So we are a corner lot, and again, we have both a primary and secondary frontage along Ship and then Water. The next slide is again the assessor's map, but this gives you a good idea where the you can see the structures more clearly in this picture. Here's our lot. Here's the existing structure here. Here is the shed that is proposed to be taken down, and the proposed location of the ADU is right here in the middle of the lot. Next slide, please. So this is a picture of the property from Water Street. So that's one of our front yards, Water Street, where I believe 1.2 feet off of water. Next slide, please. This is the other front yard along Ship Street. Somehow we seem to have different presentations. I'm sorry. So this is Ship Street. So here again is the house that fronts on water. And then here is the back, the side yard, or the other front. Here's the shed, and the proposed ADU is right there. Next slide, please. This is just a close-up of that, so you can see the relevance of the existing shed and the location of where the ADU will be sitting essentially on those bricks to the structure. Also, this gives us a good view of some of our neighbors to the back rear. Last picture, I think. I'm sorry, this is Ship Street. This is just a view down Ship Street from our property. As you can see, all of the houses along Smith Street, Ship Street are right along the roadway, and that's why the determined front yard is only 3.6 feet for the street. The next plan is actually shows you our existing conditions plan and our proposed plan. This is the location of the ADU right here. We are proposing to put 3 parking spaces designated here. And as you will see on the plan I provided with your packets, it did come to our attention yesterday as part of one of the letters we received with respect to this, that we were in fact not showing our 5th parking spot, and it is right here. So we have 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5. And you do have a plan, which I uploaded this afternoon, which shows the 2 spots here. So you do now have a plan that shows the 5 parking spots. I do apologize, we didn't pick up on that. So, again, Ship Street, water, and that's the site plan. We could go to the next slide, please. So these are elevation plans of the proposed ADU. I'll remind the board, we are just under 900 square feet over 2 stories, front, rear, left, and right side elevations. If we could go to the next slide. In the interest of time, these are just the floor plans showing you that what we are proposing to build within the ADU. We do meet the ADU requirements with respect to, bathroom, kitchen, and no more than 2 bedrooms. So, if you go to the next slide. All right, this is a rendering done by Mr. Steves, as the architect for the property, showing where this ADU will sit in location relative to the existing house, which is over to the left, and then the shed used to sit right here, a little farther back, but as you can see, to the right here are the 2 parking spaces, and to the left, you can start to see the parking for the other 3 spaces. So the other thing you want to notice here is that this house is 2 stories. It is a total of 15 feet in height. And yet all of the buildings around us, including the multi-unit building behind us, are 2.5 to 3 stories in height. So this structure is going to sit and be surrounded by not only multifamily homes for the most part, but also much larger structures. Next slide, please. So with respect to the special permit, we do need a special permit to allow us to increase this pre-existing non-conforming lot coverage. The increase in the non-conformity will not be significantly more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing condition. Even with the increase in its non-conformity, this lot will still have less lot coverage than the entirety of the immediate neighborhood, with the exception of one neighbor. We do have one neighbor across the way that is at 15% lot coverage. Other than that, every lot in the general neighborhood along the street, water, and Smith Street and Ship Street are all significantly higher lot coverage. And again, in response to the letter I received yesterday, I did prepare a chart that I provided to you with your package, and which I uploaded to the website earlier today. And as you can see on this chart, I've identified the units, the buildings in yellow, or the lots in yellow that are multifamily or 2-family uses. And I have identified for you the lot coverage on each of these neighboring lots. As you can see, what we did and what Scott did as the architect of record, he went out and he pulled the lot areas as reported by the assessor's office. He then took the structure sizes as reported by the assessors, and we did the math to create the lot coverage numbers for the neighbors. And as you can see, we're proposing 34.3%. The multifamily behind us is at 41. The single family behind us is at 36. The 2-unit building to the right, which occupies 7 and 9 Ship Street, they have a 35.7 and a 29.7. But I think that's a little deceiving because it's one structure that overlaps the lots. So if you were to calculate the lot coverage for those 2 combined lots with the duplex building on it, it well exceeds 35% or 30%. And then I'll leave it to you, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, to look at the rest of it. But as you can see, we're talking 49%, 36, 40, 47, 45. My client at 34.3 will literally still be one of the lowest lot coverages in the entire neighborhood. I will remind you too, we do meet the open space requirement on the lot post ADU development. And with the exception of that front yard setback, We meet all other dimensional regulations required relative to height. And those regulations that address massing and scaling, right? Building's only 15 feet high, it's only 900 square feet, less than 900 square feet in total. And it does meet all of the setbacks to the neighbors, with the exception of the front yard setback to the street. So we're not imposing on any of our neighbors around us by increasing our lot coverage. So if you could go to the next slide. Actually, I think at that point, if, Chairman, if you're accepting of this, I'd like to answer questions that we have about the, questions you might have about the special permit, or I go into the variance, which is a whole different set of sort of facts and figures. Is that something you would entertain?
Actually, we generally do this as one combined proposal.
All right, then we'll continue through. But just in closing, if you go back one slide, I just wanted to conclude by saying the increase in the lot coverage is not going to have a significant detrimental impact. In fact, it's hard to identify what detrimental impact there would be in light of the fact that all of the abutting neighbors have much greater lot coverage, and the proposal is only to add 406 square feet. I'll remind the board, it's not a question of whether the ADU use will be significantly detrimental to the neighborhood, but rather with respect to this special permit, the question is, will the increase in lot coverage, will the increase in lot coverage cause any detrimental effects? And I can't find out, I haven't heard from any of the opposition letters or anyone else. We've heard a lot of why an ADU here is going to be detrimental. But that's not the question for the board. The question for the board is, will this increase in the non-conforming lot coverage be significantly more detrimental to the neighborhood? And I would say, given the situation in the neighborhood, it will not. So, moving on to the next slide, Caitlin. Again, this is just, again, to show you the location of this lot. And again, we've got a front setback on water and a front back setback, excuse me, setback. So the zoning officer determined that we do need a variance from the front yard setback. We are a corner lot, therefore we have to meet 2 sets of front yard requirements. Next slide, please. I do want to remind the board that the established front yard setback under the Newburyport ordinances for this principal structure is 3.2 feet. Yet, because we're building an ADU, which is considered an accessory structure, we are held to meeting both front yards, and we are not allowed to use the established front yard, which is interesting. The zoning officer determined that as a corner lot, the development of the ADU required meeting the front yard setbacks from both streets. And it determined that, in fact, and again, why it says Smith, I apologize. Ship Street is the front yard for ADU creation purposes. Therefore, we are required to meet that setback. Requiring Smith to be the front yard creates a hardship owing to the shape of that lot. All right, it creates a situation where the client ends up with only 37 feet of width, depth to build the house. All right, so go to the next slide. And so a literal enforcement of the ordinance would involve substantial hardship, both in terms of negative financial impacts to my client if he's not able to do this, but also a clear deprivation of the use of his property for a by right use. I'll remind you again that the question of whether the variance is justified, it's not a question of whether putting an ADU here is justified, but rather it is a physical structure variance. There is a unique requirement imposed on this lot to use Ship Street as the controlling front lot line. It results in a lot depth of only 37 feet. And by the time you go back 25 feet from the setback, 6 feet from the rear setback, you're only left with, 11 feet to build a building. So we cannot fit a building of reasonable use in an 11-foot wide. If the legal frontage was measured on Water Street, then we wouldn't need a variance. We meet the setback from water. It's the setback from ship that we don't. A little enforcement of the zoning ordinance involves both a substantial financial hardship, and again, would deprive my client of a reasonable use, which is allowed by right of this property, being the ADU. The hardship is not self-imposed, but rather based on a determination by the zoning enforcement officer that we have in determining the applicable front yard of a long existing non-conforming lot. It's clearly unique to this property. While other lots are narrow or rectangles, they are not imposed, they don't have this imposition of having to meet two front yards. It really is a unique hardship applicable to this lot by reason of the way that the city applies the ADU regulations. We can go to the next slide, please. So, no substantial detriment. The front yard setback relief sought would not result in any substantial detriment to the public good or substantially derogate from the intent and purpose of the zoning ordinance. This is a question of the impacts of a reduced frontage setback. It is not a question of whether the use will be detrimental. Again, the use is allowed by right. That's not before you. There's no substantial detriment to the public good because the proposed location of the ADU is set back over 10 feet on the road where the established front yard setback is 3.6 feet. If we were building a principal structure here, a big structure, we'd only have to be 3.6 feet off. But because we're considered an accessory structure, we have to meet the full 25-foot setback. And by providing this variance, as you saw from the rendering, it'll allow this ADU to be set in the middle of the lot, right? Meeting all the setbacks to the neighbors on the three sides. We're only asking for relief to move it closer to the road, which won't have any impact to the abutting neighbors other than those across the street, but we have a street between us. So, and given the fact that all their other neighbors are on average 3 feet from the road, I cannot see how this, 15-foot structure being 10 feet from the road is going to be overbearing or overpowering. So it's not going to derogate from the intent and purpose of the ordinance. The intent is to maintain a space between the ADU and the street, and our ADU meets the front setback from Water Street and both side setbacks. We meet the established front yard setback from a principal structure. Because the ADU is considered an accessory structure, again, the ordinance for some reason imposes a greater setback on an ADU, which is interesting. Because the ADU, again, and that's just it, because the ADU is considered an accessory structure, the ordinance requires a greater setback. Allowing the variance will not substantially derogate from the purpose because our result is we are keeping the house away from abutters. We meet all the setbacks. It's only the road we're going closer to. And quite frankly, the setback on that road is 3.6 feet. And we're at 10 feet. So I cannot see how that is going to derogate from the intent and purpose of your ordinance. Next slide, please. Again, guys, I just wanted to show you this is where the ADU is proposed. And I want to just slide through the next one. This is our neighbor across Ship Street. You can see how close, and then essentially our parking lot will be across the street from that parking lot. Our ADU will be sort of where I was standing and taking that picture. And as you can see, being 10 feet off that street is not going to impose on our neighbors across the street, whose home is approximately 3 or 4 feet off the street. So, next slide. These are our neighbors behind us, multifamily 3-story building. And again, our ADU is meeting the setback from this property. Next slide. This is also our neighbors on Smith Street. You can see where their parking lot is. And you can see the space between these two buildings. That's where our ADU will sit, is right back there, sort of in front of that. It appears blue in this picture, but that's that house across the street that I showed you earlier. Last slide, I think, Galen. This is just Smith Street again, the neighbors behind us. And then, so in conclusion, the ADU is a by right use under your bylaws, which is created pursuant to state law, both of which are intended to help alleviate the housing shortage in Newburyport. Newburyport passed this bylaw to encourage the development of these ADUs. In terms of the special permit, the proposed de minimis increase in the lot coverage of 106 feet will be mostly imperceptible to the neighbors. The increase in the lot coverage will not be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood, and the resulting lot coverage on our lot is still going to be lower than most, if not all of the properties in the neighborhood, and the ADU meets open space requirements. So we can't be said that we're overburdening the lot. With respect to the variance, the imposition of the front yard setbacks and the required use of Ship Street, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble with my content. The imposition of the structure setback from Ship Street for the frontage creates a unique hardship on this lot, being on the corner and having to meet two setbacks and having to meet the accessory structure setbacks when we're doing an ADU. The denial of the variance would certainly result in a financial hardship to my client, but would deprive him of the use of his property for a by right use. And granting the variance is not going to be substantially detrimental to the public good and is in keeping with your bylaw. It is still requiring that this ADU does not impose on any of the neighbors. Rather, we're just pushing it forward on a street that has a setback established at 3.6 feet. So I think this can be done without derogating from the intent and purpose of your bylaw. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
All right, thank you very much. That closes the presentation portion of the hearing, and we'll get the questions to you shortly, but first we need to hear from the public. So anybody in the public who would like to make some comments, either supportive or against, or just ask questions, may take the microphone. See, we already have a volunteer. Please state your name and your address, so our note taker can get all this down in the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Lisa Meadby, Talon Costa, on behalf of Stephanie Bro, who is the owner of 4 Smith Street, who was behind the proposal on at 82 Water Street. I also, not great with technology, but I did report to the office to go to a 5 o'clock meeting, checked to make sure there wasn't anything else filed on this that I didn't have tonight. There had been, and then I just checked again, and there isn't anything new filed, but Mr. Deschaines, Attorney Deschaines referred to a comparison chart that he handed everybody that he indicated was filed on OpenGov. And so maybe I'm missing that on OpenGov. I don't know, maybe you saw it, but we haven't seen that. So haven't had an opportunity to, I'm not going to address that, but we haven't had an opportunity to examine it. That having been said, I also want to point out to the board that this lot is not actually non-conforming. This lot is subject to a variance from 1989 when the then owners received a variance, which was then in the R3 district, to allow 2-family on the lot, which was undersized. So in fact, the size of the lot is not non-conforming, it's actually subject to the 1989 variance. And as Attorney Deschaines suggested, that the house is set back from Water Street by 1.4 feet, which is a nonconformity, of course, and Ship Street at 1.2 feet, and the total lot coverage is also the nonconformity, as he suggested, at 26.8%, and the request is to go up nearly 25% increase at 34.3%. I'd like to highlight, though, that this lot, notwithstanding everything, is one of the biggest in the neighborhood and is the exact same shape as all of the surrounding lots. It's a rectangle. There's nothing unique about it. The applicant's property is 5,419 square feet and has 172.84 feet of frontage. 97 Water Street is 4,251. 99 Water Street is 3,441. Those are both rectangles. 80 Water Street immediately to the west is 2,701 square feet. It's a rectangle. 84 to 86 Water Street at 5,655 square feet. Right next door, which is the only one that's bigger, is a rectangle. Smith Street at 1,498 square feet. To the east is a rectangle. 7 Ship Street at 2,370 square feet is long and narrow, is a rectangle. And 9 Ship Street at 2,919 square feet, long and narrow, is also a rectangle. All of the surrounding properties are rectangles, and the shape of this property is not unique. And certainly you cannot have compliance with the ordinance in and of itself as a hardship to the lot. So complying with the front yard setback should not be considered in and of itself as a hardship. And as I indicated earlier, the lot has already received a variance on it, and so therefore it has already received a special privilege, and the denying this variance would not be depriving the reasonable use of the property, which has already been given a special privilege. In this instance, not only would there be a special privilege, there would be a second special privilege, which is inconsistent with the limitations of all the other properties in the district. But by allowing this proposed ADU to be constructed, not with regard to the use, which of course would be allowed by right, on this slide it's clearly too narrow to support the additional structure and would be violating the very intent and purpose of the ordinance noted in my filing. As to the special permit, while in most instances such an intensification may be justified, in this instance, it cannot be done without being more substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the pre-existing non-conforming structure. At the outset, it should not be lost that the existing two-family exists again as a result of the ordinance. I was going to say that it didn't have enough parking. Mr. Duchesne did address the parking, although I would suggest that the parking directly opposite the parking on the other side is not a good condition. In fact, is a detriment to the neighborhood. Having those parking juxtaposed right across from one another, backing out onto that narrow, very narrow street. I don't know how many of you have been up Ship Street. I'm sure you have. You can barely walk up Ship Street, let alone drive a car and back it out. And in fact, as you go up Ship Street, some of the houses are actually on the street, literally in the street. So further, the configuration with the parking of now proposed tandem parking by the ADU, the question becomes, who is going to park there? Who's going to have that tandem parking? Are you going to make the ADU person park in a single car? Only for, I'm talking about what's detrimental, and having the people in the house park in the two-family parking, the tandem parking, I think it becomes a management issue, and certainly then becomes more detrimental to the people on the street. While folks go and they decide who's going to pull in and who's going to pull out, they're going to be waiting on the street, and that is certainly more detrimental to the neighborhood. And the fact of the matter is, frankly, they're trying to stuff 10 pounds into a 5-pound bag here. There's just not enough room on the site. I do want to address the issues with the ADU, and not related to the use, but related to the requirements of an ADU. The floor plans show 482 square feet basement with ceilings of 9 feet, clearly a habitable area. First floor is 482 square feet. The second floor is 367 square feet. That's a total of 1,531 square feet, which exceeds the requirements both under state law as well as under this Newburyport ordinance. Now, the Newburyport ordinance does not define gross floor area, but it does define floor area total, which says the sum of the gross horizontal areas of the floor or floors of a building which are enclosed and usable for occupancy or the conduct of business, and shall be measured between the inside face of the exterior walls and from the center line of the wall separating the two uses. But garage space, accessory building space, or cellar space is excluded except if these areas are utilized by the principal use, occupying or conducted within the lot. So that basement is countable even under the total floor area under the city's ordinance. But more important, the state regulation 760 CMR 71, which governs ADUs and the measurement ADUs, which is adopted and included in our ordinance, says that the gross floor area is the sum of the areas of all stories of the building of compliant ceiling height pursuant to the building code, including basements, lofts, and intermediate floors tiered, measured from the interior faces, etc. So this space in the basement, which are submitted as part of their plans, is a buildable area. As a result, this is another principal structure on the lot, which they need a 60 special permit from the planning board and not from the zoning board. That's a by right use. It's not a permissible ADU. So with that, I would just like to reiterate that the applicant does not meet the requirements of the ordinance related to a variance, does not meet the requirements related to a special permit. We believe it's substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. And the ADU that is proposed is in fact not an ADU at all. It's a second principal residence, which requires a 60 special permit, and in fact couldn't comply because there is already a two-family on the lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Additional public input. Anybody else? Yes. Please state your name and where you live.
I'm Mark Iannello from 15B Federal Street. I'm representing the president of the Ocean Views Condominium Association, of which I'm a member. She submitted a letter of opposition to the 82 Water Street back on April 3rd. I just want to make sure it's in the record that you have that. But basically, I just want to reiterate a couple of points that she made, for the neighborhood, the use and occupancy, it's another, we have a multi-unit, two-family building as it is on that lot. And now this would add another, the ADU would add another lot. It's a very congested street. Parking and congestion is a real problem. Trash vehicles sometimes can't get up because everybody parks on Ship Street. If you have a home on Ship Street, there's a lot of off-street parking there. So that's just going to make that a little bit more difficult. And then just want, as the last point we just wanted to make was, it's a two-family residence, and I know the ADUs, under the ordinance, the ADUs and under state law, or in general, to allow people who have principal residence to build a supplemental dwelling unit so they can supplement their income. That's not the case here. This is a two-family, which is an investment property, and now they just want to put another investment property on that lot. And so I don't think that's or meets the general purpose of the ordinance and the ADU law. So with that, just want to cite our opposition from Ocean View Condominium. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else would like to provide some comment tonight? Anyone? Yes.
Hello, my name is Norman Sewell. I live at 4 Ship Street with my wife Linda. We've been residents for 33 years, raised our kids there. Everybody respectfully, Duchesne said that this wouldn't be an imposition. Everybody who's here tonight who's in a butter believes this would be a detriment to the quality of life. And a significant one, and one that's irreparable. And Ship Street is a tiny, tiny street. I took out the tail light of Stephanie's husband just a couple of months ago during the winter. I like light, but I still took out his tail light. That's what this neighborhood is. There's broken tail lights all the time. Everyone flips their side view mirror because you're going to get it taken off, broken or something. So it is a very dense neighborhood. It's adding to what is already a dense neighborhood is not going to be good for anybody. I would just respectfully ask the board to consider the opinion of those of us who actually make our home in this neighborhood. We care about it. I think we will continue to be good stewards of the Newburyport. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Who else would like to provide some input to this hearing tonight? Good question. Go ahead. Yes.
My name is Diana, or Dido there. I'm at 11 Ship Street. And as a neighborhood, it is a very close-knit neighborhood. And we were reached out to by Steve's attorney. And I guess it was a continuance that was put forward because nobody responded. And then they reached out to us again, just with a copy letter. And I feel like if this was such a big thing for them, wasn't there any address to the neighbors who took the time to write these letters and express our, what the detriment was going to be to the neighborhood? Why they made no effort to communicate and address any of those particular issues that we had raised. And parking wasn't just parking, but parking was one. The care of that property as the place has looked like a mess for 10 years that I've lived there. And it just strikes me that if you're going to be sending letters out to the neighborhood, why not address some of the issues directly to us? And that's all I'd like to say. It is a detriment, and we would really like this not to happen.
Thank you. Who else would like to say something this evening, or you can ask a question as well? Whatever. Anybody else?
I am Greg Carson. I live at 84 Water Street, the yellow building, 6-unit building. I would just like to address the quality of life issues as well. We have built a patio property and now to have 5 parking spaces, putting fumes right onto us, onto our patio would be a real quality of life issue. So I was very happy that all of us got together as neighbors and worked on this and really talked about the quality of life being impacted by. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, going once, going twice, we will close the public comment period of the hearing. Now we get to the period of the hearing where the board asks questions of the applicant. And who would like to begin this section? Mr. Bennett.
I have a threshold before we. That is the concern that Attorney Mead raised regarding you, and that's the threshold. To be honest, we have to get good luck. Observations on that.
Well, Ms. Bedick, I do want to say, my client did originally, approach the planning department when he was intending to apply for this. He did apply for it on his own. And at that time, your zoning administrator determined that the proposal did in fact meet the requirements for your ADU. We weren't told otherwise, and we were directed that we needed the variance and the special permit. But to the extent there is if in fact the fact that the ceiling height down there is of habitable height and therefore would be considered usable, my client, we can lower the ceiling height in there. And to give background to that answer, my client intends to move into this unit. He is building this to move up here. He is downsizing from a rather large home compared to a 900 square foot ADU. And that's why he built the basement for storage and a washer dryer. He needs a place to put his stuff. But if that ceiling height is such that it disqualifies us from being an ADU, it is easy enough to just lower the ceiling height in that basement to below the occupiable level, which will allow it to be used for storage and for laundry. So we can address that, although again, Mr. Bennett, the question was never raised when the application was made, and I apologize.
I don't necessarily accept Attorney Mead's interpretation is correct, but it certainly raises the issue that we have to drill down and get an answer to. And I'll ask my colleague. I don't believe that the approach simply be for you to tell me you're going to reduce the height of the basement. I would like to know, because the plans are before start to make these changes on the fly. Quite comfortable. So I'm a little at a loss. Approach would be to ask them to advise. would be helpful. That a clear perspective on this, and how we treat this issue.
Yeah, I mean, I also, first of all, this case should be a final exam. It's got everything, including preemption by state law. And I'm not happy with the OHLC. Yeah, I think we do have a threshold question on the size, the square footage, because it's not just the basement also, because in the calculation that you did of the floor space, there were certain exclusions made. And I don't see that, and again, I don't doubt that the zoning administrator saw that and said that was okay. But I don't see that in our code. The definition doesn't say that. So I'm just looking at the mass. You know, and it's 22 by 20. And then you multiply that, you times 2, and it's more than 900 square feet. So that's one thing, and so first things first, I do think you could amend your application to get it down to 900 square feet. But the thing also that Attorney Mead raised, which I had raised with the zoning administrator, and now I'm going to raise it again, is, when you get a variance, it's not a non-conforming, basically a variance, we were taught. The variance is saying, yes, it doesn't comply with the zoning, but you can do it anyway. Back in 1989, he didn't have, Mr. Yates, I think, he didn't have enough square footage. He needed 1,200. 12,000 to do a 2-family.
Right.
And so they made all these findings, and they said, all right, we're gonna give you special dispensation. There's hardship, blah blah blah.
They found it.
Yeah, here's the 1989 stuff. You can do 2 units, but they described a project. They said it had 3,100 square feet of open space. They said it was a 2-car garage. So I would have thought that Jennifer would make you amend the 1989 variance rather than make you get 2 forms of relief. I'm saying, you have to get a variance anyway. It just seems to me that would be cleaner. You're amending the variance from 1989. You're saying we're not just going to do 2 units. We want to add an ADU, a certain location. We won't have 30. Won't have to. So it's messy, procedurally messy. But the question I wanted to ask was about measurement of open space. So again, I'm not questioning that you went through with zoning administrator. So there are 3 parking. How many parking spaces are there today?
Technically 4.
Technically 4. Because if you look at I'm going from memory years ago, and then I looked on Google Street View. Where the 3 spots are, that seems to have been added in the last 10 years, because that was not done in 1989. That was just grass. Do we know when it was added? Small park?
We used the gravel for many years, and then I paved them with bricks because the gravel kept washing out onto Chip Street. But the quantity of parking changed.
So, going back how many years?
The gravel parking lot's been there since I've owned property, so nearly 20 years.
Well, not the 2-car, not the one at the farthest away from Water Street. I'm talking about parking in the middle of.
Kevin, could we
Well,
go to the picture?
that's just proposed now because so we're taking, separating the parking that's existing.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to get. So it is grass today.
It's grass now.
All right. And then in the calculations. Yeah, nice to meet you. Yeah. And in 1989, they approved that 2-car. When you do the new parking, 3 parking spaces side by side on Ship Street, isn't that lot coverage? Doesn't that, I don't think you can count that.
No, lot coverage is a function
I'm sorry,
of building.
I misspoke.
Open space.
Not lot. Open space. You can't count it as open space if it's.
Correct. But even with the proposal, we will meet your open space requirements. We have that much. So we will meet your open space requirements.
Sam, that's why I'm back to the 1989 variance. So they had certain assumptions about your open space.
Right, that we were conformed, and we will continue to be.
Is for.
Mhm.
All right, so that's my question about parking and the open space. No more questions. All right,
Who else from you? Larry?
Did you have something you wanted to share?
I do agree with the need and whatnot. Yeah, and I also agree with the notion of the.
Thank you, appreciate your thoughts. I can see your eyes moving there, so at that time. This is very messy and, this obviously is not gonna happen tonight. I'm just curious about just a few things in the presentation. Like, why isn't the basement in the presentation? Or like, with your handout, has no basement in it either.
Mhm.
But then we go online, we see a full basement. Just curious, like that basement.
Well, the basement was shown on the plans that were submitted. I just didn't.
Gave us all this handout, it had no basement. The basement's kind of a big deal.
You already have the basement stuff. I didn't want to represent it. That's all.
And then when we talk about the ADU law, the ADU law came to us from the state. Okay. All right, I mean, it's just some of your comments kind of felt like you were saying that your hardship came from the zoning enforcement officer. You almost actually said that.
The hardship is relating to the fact that we're a corner lot, which was the basis for the hardship in 37 years ago when the board granted the variance. What's the hardship they relied on was the fact that it was a corner lot.
The rules are the rules.
Yeah, yeah.
I think your hardship was created by that employee. It's your situation. That's not.
John?
So, in the ADU, amended section that we have in the zoning ordinance, it states that in section 610D, that the ADU shall cover no more of the ground area, an area measuring 528 square feet and have no wall length exceeding more than 24 feet, nor shall it exceed 15 feet. 15 feet. So the proposed plan is generally 24 by 22, which is exactly 528 square feet, but there's a bay window. Exceeds the gross square footage requirement because it is outside the 28 square foot rectangle. So it's non-conforming that particular section. Caitlin, if you're able to go to the rendering. So on this, we have a mansard with a section of volumes around it.
And so according to Jennifer's determination of the requirements, things exterior of the main footprint of the building, typical architectural restraints such as soffits, chimneys, bulkheads, and bay windows do not count against the square footage. And I was only following her lead when she assisted me with the calculations. I reverse engineered this based on her. Jennifer determined what the maximum square footage of livable area is and how to decipher what a dormer was and ceiling heights et cetera. The only thing we never addressed was the basement, but again, it was never meant to be habitable. So to reduce our standard architectural requirements are if I'm no more than 7 feet high in the basement, it's no longer habitable. And based on the fact that it was intended to be storage, that's all it would take, is to reduce that finished height in a basement to 7 feet, and then it's no longer a possibility of legal habitation. But again, I worked backwards with Jennifer we had several meetings of going back and forth in order to design something that conformed to her perspective of what the architectural requirements were of the ADU.
Okay, appreciate that context. I will say architecture is a really nice looking building. Done a nice job to design something that would look good. But the bay window does touch the ground, and this specifically says cover no more of the ground than 528 square feet. So
The bush might prevent you from seeing that it's a cantilevered bay, but obviously if it comes down to a simple technicality like that, again, I worked backwards with what Jennifer decided was going to be approved and legitimate. So, I mean, for me to do it again for details like that is fairly.
on
Like, for example, there's no foundation under the bay. It's just a can.
on this, can I ask the dark line around the top? What would you classify that?
What was the question?
The dark line around the top of the rendering.
That's just that's an intermediate soffit that is integral to that style of roof.
So on the projecting pieces where the windows are.
Yeah, it's a soffit it's an intermediate soffit that runs around the middle of mansard roof. It's just integral to that style.
I guess the question I have is, in looking at the way building heights is to, so our definition is building height measured from the mean grade elevation, which looks like in the elevations you're measuring from the highest grade elevation, but to the mean highest roof line, including features explicitly exempted. The highest roof line appears to me to be from the three larger boxes around with the lowest slope roof. But it's not from
Again, in negotiations with Jennifer, who provided other guidelines to show what would be approved, it was the median height of the roof, which was the average between the lower soffit and the ridge of the roof. So, and again, this was reverse engineered from that dimension in order to accommodate her requirement.
Understood. I appreciate the context to the conversations. And I'm new to the board, bringing our background to it, reading exactly the zoning code as it reads to me and what I see in the drawings. To me, the highest roof line here looks like it's the projected volumes of the established heat. Measured to that. Also measuring from the average grade, I think the building is exceeding 50 feet. So between that, the basement, the extra square footage, the bay window not being counted in the square footage, the stair not being counted in the square footage on the second floor, it just seems like this building is significantly larger than the ADU. I think there's some inherent flaws in this for this use here.
Okay, Lyle, you have anything or?
I have a question that went to the variance issue. I don't know what you mean.
Yes.
So can you go over these again? Sure. Let's do that again.
The hardship is the fact that this lot is uniquely situated in the sense that it's a corner lot. We are required to meet 2 front yards. And The interesting thing is that if we were building a principal structure here, or if we were building an attached addition to this,
But if you were building a principal structure here,
right?
you would have to meet, what would you have to meet to build a principal structure? You'd have to meet.
3.6. The established front yard.
But you'd have to meet the rear setback in that instance too, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Then you have to, with the orientation of the existing structure. That how you meet that.
Mhm. Now, the existing structure is only not going to the two front, it meets the two rears. In the same way that our proposed ADU will meet one front, both rears, but we need a variance for the front, for the secondary front.
It meets the rear only in that has that the 6 feet.
Yeah,
setback
we have
from the
proposed
side.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying, the setback to that blue house to the right, the two houses to the rear, we meet all of those setbacks.
Okay. Then this gets also to the idea or the concept of the uniqueness of the lot. The uniqueness of the lot is not due to its shape or anything, it's just due to.
Well, uniqueness is due to the fact that it's a corner lot and it's 37 feet wide. That's a pretty narrow lot. It was established how far ago, how long ago?
Right.
And you know, it's interesting, we're focusing on this other variance, which I understand why. That was a variance determined 37 years ago in a very different set of rules and regulations. And the board did determine that there was a hardship owing to this lot because it was on a corner and had to meet certain requirements. And that was the basis for granting the variance to allow for the two-family to begin with. So I don't feel we're double dipping, coming now to ask for enough more relief or a more privilege.
Well,
You know, the board determined
that's
that.
legal determination as to how you would do this procedure.
Right.
Whether you're doing something with a new variance or
Right.
modifying the old variance, and then if you're modifying the old variance, we have to weigh all those factors in, and it's
Sure.
not granted 37 years ago, it's now going to get granted tonight. That's, I think it becomes a different thing. But going back to the criteria that we have to weigh, in number 4, the criteria talks about relief, and if it's granted, it's not granted special privilege. Is it? I don't want to go back to the old one.
Sure.
I say that it's too special privilege. Let's not do that. But let's just say that is it a special privilege to say that you're stuck on this corner lot, but your corner lot is also too narrow?
Yeah, it's the uniqueness of this particular corner lot. I agree.
in lot in an area where everything is very condensed and long, thin lots, and you have two front yards because you're a corner. I just don't see that as a hard to me. That's my feeling about it.
Okay, thank you. Next. I'll go next. Yeah, I mean, I do think we need to continue this. But let's start from basics. So the basic is, it was already the city's policy, even before the state passed their preemptive law, that we wanted to encourage accessory dwellings, small units. We hadn't passed the ordinance yet, but it had been written. We used to have an in-law ordinance, which we knew was not workable, so. Because we didn't really check whether the people were related anyway, and it was a joke. But, so again, on the use, I do think the applicant can get there. I want to stick up for Jennifer Blanchett, the zoning administrator, and that this is all new for her too. You know, figuring out ADUs and the state regulations, which are highly flawed. And so I sympathize to the applicant that, you know, he, as you said, he reverse engineered. So I don't want to get into a, you know, finger pointing on that. That's not the point. We'll get to the bottom of it, and including how to calculate height. And as the chair knows, this is going to be an issue in the reform discussion tomorrow night, is how we measure height of mansard roofs, actually. Because in some cities, they don't allow you to do median, you have to go to peak. And you're being caught up in that. I guess what I want to get to the bottom line on is, if it were just this building, I think there's a way that you could design it. I'm not talking about variances. I'm talking about just policy. If I lived on Ship Street, and I do know Ship Street pretty well, I know how narrow it is. And having been a city councilor, I always think of snow emergencies, always. It's the first thing I think of when I think of a project coming in, what's going to happen during the snow emergency. So I think there would be a way to make this, you know, not obtrusive to have a two-story detached ADU, just that concept. The problems that I see are not just the variance findings, which are a big problem, because we don't have topography here. We don't have a tree. We don't have, you know, and you already heard from Larry Jinta on that. He said it well. But I think also what I'm hearing from the neighbors and from my own experience is that it's actually all of the paving that is going to be a problem, and the cars. So when they did the variance in 1989, again, the law has changed since 1989 on how you can even give a variance. In any case, they had 2-car parking. They didn't require 4, required 2 for the 2 units. And it seems to me it's not. I don't understand why it's required to have 5 spaces. The 2 units already exist. I don't understand why you don't just have to do the parking for 1 building. The reason why I raise that is I think this would be a lot less controversial for the neighborhood if you didn't have 5 cars parking here. There is on-street parking on Water Street. Yes, I am thinking snow emergency. It's better to have off-street, but just, you know, how I'm thinking of life on the street, there's all that paving. And you know, the open space calculations, I'm sure technically you're supposed to find, I think it's 40% requirement, but it really is going to change the sort of quality of life for, and there's going to be a yard anymore for the people in the main house. So I'm just flagging those things. There's nothing to do with the variance findings. I'm just talking about, you know, end state, what it would be like for people living on the street. And so actually, it's not that it's a non-starter to have a detached ADU of 500 square feet here. I'm troubled actually by all the parking. What else was I going to say?
I think that's enough. I mean, we covered the rest.
Anyone else?
I just have two quick comments. I agree with the comments of my colleagues. I also, in my deliberations, when we get to these deliberations, I feel strongly about continued development and use and construction of ADUs in our community. They're obviously needed, and this one is well designed. ADU, not maybe too big, we'll get through that. So, I'm strongly in favor of any application for an ADU. Second, I'm a little bemused by the fact that we have an established frontage of 3.8 feet, and yet this structure would have to be 20 feet. It makes little sense at all. But it is what we have to deal with, and that falls under the notion is sufficient to meet the various requirements. So those are just our issues.
Yeah, I would share the sentiments of my colleagues. And I'm a little bit curious and a little worried about whether procedurally you're getting a new variance or you're opening that old variance up. And then if you open that old variance up, what happens based on, how things get decided now? That's what I think you've got a research project in front of you to figure that out. I'm glad I don't have to do it. But I'm curious about that. It's interesting.
I think so on the parking side of build on Jared's comments. I do think that the parking is actually well situated on this thing. It's across from other parking, and so that will lead to less headaches from backing out into parked cars that might be parked, which is only parking on the other side of the street. So there's no one going to be parked on the applicant side. Having some head-to-head driveways, I will say, across the street is actually beneficial. So I think locating the building as a standalone building, it's actually done really well from a planning perspective. I think that's going to create for better placement. I think the variance requirements are tough, that everybody else said here. It's hard to find the hardship. No matter what the way the zoning code is written, no matter what, Ship Street is the front yard, the primary front yard, as it's defined, it will always be, I believe it's a 25-foot setback. The ADU is an accessory use, so it needs to be an accessory structure that's detached. I think there might be some other configurations of how this can be handled on the site that don't require a variance to put an ADU here. It might not be as good planning wise for the applicant or for the street, but there's probably paths forward that don't require a variance.
One thing about the having dimensional requirements for an ADU be different than for the principal structure, just so people know, before the state promulgated the regulations, Newburyport had adopted an ordinance where they said it would be the same dimensional requirements as a principal dwelling. And it was actually in reaction to the state that they changed it, and it's the accessory. But ask yourself, but I hear Mr. Bennett's point, which is why is it even different? And this is the problem with, the concept of an ADU. Like if you look at it online, it's always like a big suburban lot with this nice, cabin in the backyard, and that's not what we have in Newburyport to deal with. So that's why we have trouble with. But one last thing, John mentioned, you could do an addition, right? You could add up to 900 square feet. I'm not saying that it's architecturally feasible or meets their business plan.
But, you know, it would be possible to do a 900 square foot addition off the back of the original house and not need a variance.
It'd be a special permit for non-conformities.
Well,
Just argument, if I do up, continue.
I think it would be, I still think you'd have to amend the old variance for me. But anyway,
We've moved many applicants in a different direction away from the variance of what they could do
yeah,
versus what they wanted.
yeah, I guess what I'm trying to get at is when I'm hearing from the board, I don't hear any antipathy towards an ADU. That's not,
It's a great
that's not where
concept.
I was from.
Great
We're
concept.
all wrestling with the dimensional issues. I'm wrestling with the open space and the paved area. And then we all have this variance mess. It's a mess. And you'll have to work on it and we'll have to talk to our lawyer.
I'll chime in here as well. I think Larry best expressed my concern. I'm kind of in sync with him on, don't really see the hardship here, just being a thin lot in the south end. So that's the deliberation that we've had. You mentioned earlier you might want to continue this thing. What would you propose?
Hold on.
We need a month. We just talk to our lawyer, try that.
So when is your second July meeting?
No.
July 28th.
It should be a different meeting. I'm in no hurry.
All right, so if you want to push it to the first August meeting, that would be fine.
Well, the problem with August is some people may be leaving town. We've already continued it once. I want to be sensitive to the neighbors too, so. What do you guys think? Push it to August or?
Well, there's a question of our own, there's some legal questions here. We may want to get our own legal
Yeah,
input on.
we need time to talk.
And so I guess my question over here to Andy is what is there,
I think a month makes more sense than 2 weeks, but I think beyond that, it's up to you all to, what they.
so it could either be the second one in July or the first in August from your perspective?
Yeah.
Second of July, the middle.
So what would you propose?
July,
Again, late July.
which is, today's the 9th. So that-
28th.
July
28th.
July 28th. And do we have availability that night?
Yes.
We do. And, you need to get the stuff to us in advance of that. Because if it's a change, it should really be like a week earlier.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll entertain a motion to continue this to July 21st.
So,
28.
I'm sorry, I was thinking about when you're supposed to get the material in. 28th, thank you. Is there a second? I'll second that. It's been seconded. Before we go down the line here, Mr. Delisle?
Yes.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Argument?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
I vote yes. 5 in the affirmative. We will continue it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time. Doug.
Are you able to, are you on Zoom? You're on Zoom or no? You're not. Okay. So I guess for Zoom, I will display the plan and then for the room, you'll display the plan. Is that? I don't know. It keeps kicking you out though, huh? Okay. Not sure.